me start by saying that I believe that reading is primarily a form of entertainment. When I was a teenager, I read garbage voraciously. I read it as quickly as I got my hands on it. I just loved it. And then I discovered literature. I no longer wanted to read all the garbage from my early teenage years, and now I wanted to read the good stuff. The trouble is, it was not very easy to find the good stuff. I began with Salinger, good place to start. I read everything by Salinger, which is not very much, it's only 4 books and not very large ones. After Salinger, I made my way to Kurt Vonnegut. He had substantially more books to read. I read them all. Where did I go next? Salinger, Vonnegut, Steinbeck, who really has a lot of books. However, it was quite clear that one of Steinbeck's novels was far and away a greater achievement than all of the others. There was one book which was substantially a masterpiece, and there were a lot of good books that I was happy to read because it was more Steinbeck. Now I felt good, I felt accomplished. I was reading a lot of books. When I went to the used bookstore, I would browse, but it was in a very limited way. I was looking for names that I recognized. I would say, okay, there's a name, take it off the shelf, and if it seemed good, I would buy it, and if I liked it, I would read them all. So this was my idea on how to proceed with literature. You found that writer that you liked, you read everything, and then you moved to the next author. But it was slow, and my scope was very limited. It was predominantly American literature and almost exclusively the 20th century. I hadn't read any Japanese writers. I had read very few from mainland Europe. What was the problem? Nothing. There was no problem. I was reading books that I enjoyed. We like what we like, and sometimes it is difficult to move away from what we like to something else. These writers, I'm quite sure that I like them, and those writers, I don't know yet. Gradually, my range was expanding because one writer refers to another writer. Hemingway, several occasions, mentions D.H. Lawrence, so I read D.H. Lawrence. Just everybody mentions Dostoevsky, so I read Dostoevsky. So we're going to skip ahead quite a few years, and it comes to the point where I feel that I've stagnated. I go to the bookstore and somehow I just don't see anything new on the shelves. So I tried a little experiment. It was the mid-2000s and Google was becoming quite a thing. I typed in 100 best books and all of a sudden there were lists. Honestly, I found that was a bit of a challenge to my ego. I've been reading for over a decade and all of a sudden there were books and authors I'd never heard of. It was a little bit. Once I had gotten over my childish feelings of inferiority, I took another look at the list and I said, okay, if these are the best books, let's read them. So this was where my obsession with literature took a fun new twist, because it wasn't only about reading the books. Now I had the added pleasure of hunting for the books. I was constantly searching for obscure titles. I would go to the used bookstores and I would bring my list with me. I still do, to make sure that I didn't overlook something. Over the last 10 years, I've had about 5 lists that I've been working with, but I just want to show you this one because it has given me the best results. This is the Guardian's 1,000 best books to read before you die. 1,000 books. It is quite nicely divided up into categories. We have comedy, crime, family and self, love, science fiction and fantasy, state of the nation, war and travel. A good year for me is reading 40 novels. If I read 40 novels a year, it will take me 25 years to go through this list. If I only stick to the titles on this list, 25 years. Currently, I have read 223. I still have 19 more years to go. Not all of these books are going to be to your taste. Not all of them are good for me. I do not like Charles Dickens. I have never read any Agatha Christie, and I don't want to. But I will give Agatha Christie a try, because This is the main message of the video, just in case it's getting boring. Get a big list, start reading. If you come to a title or an author and you think, oh God, not that, try it. If you don't like it, put it back on the shelf. Maybe it will be better for you in 20 years' time. It might be. There are some books which are very good to read when you're younger. There are some books which you need a degree of maturity, sometimes quite a lot, before you're ready for that. You don't have to read these books. You can skip over them. If you have an unnatural prejudice against Agatha Christie, don't read her. If you are still watching, here is the part that I struggle with. Most writers will produce one great book, critically accepted as being their greatest work. There are authors who have produced more than one great literary achievement. And the rest, while it may be good, doesn't come up to that same standard. And typically, it is that extraordinary book that we read first. It is the one that is on the list. However, when I read a great book from an author, and that is the only book I've read, I always hope that their other titles are going to be nearly as good as that masterpiece. And usually they are not. Not to say that they are bad. They still have that peculiar style, those types of characters, that idiosyncratic way that they write the dialogue. So all of this is to come back to the point that reading is for pleasure. Read what makes you happy. Reading is the greatest hobby that you can have. It is a lifetime cure for boredom. If you are happy reading those 4 books by Salinger over and over and over again, and nothing else gives you that Salinger pleasure, have at it. But here's where I have to say that I get this little added feeling of satisfaction when I read a book that I've never heard of, or the author has just remained unknown to me up till this day, and all of a sudden it's like, I found a new one. I don't always have to stick to this list. I can read whatever I like. That brings me to the book review for today. Legs by William Kennedy. There's nothing wrong with this book. It's good, it's entertaining. If I had known it was based on real life characters and events, I would have read it with a little bit more enthusiasm. I bought this book because 9 years ago I read Ironweed by William Kennedy, and it made a massive impression on me. Ironweed was the only title from the list. Does that mean that I should never read another William Kennedy because they didn't make it onto the holy list? No. I like William Kennedy. I want some more. I want to see what maybe his second best book is like. Legs is good. It's exciting. It is a prohibition gangster story. I will bet you $25 a month on Patreon that this book is made into a film by the end of this decade. They've just overlooked it. You know, our friends in Hollywood, they make a film out of damn everything. As soon as all this superhero bullshit is over, they're going to go back to the gangster stories. It is based on the true life character of Jack Legs Diamond, otherwise known as Gentleman Jack, who survived numerous assassination attempts in Philadelphia and New York. I have some contradictory feelings at the moment because while I was reading it, I was thinking, gangster novel. It was only afterwards that I found out it was based on real events and real people that I thought, okay, real life gangster story. William Kennedy is still alive today. He was born in 1928, which makes him 93 years old. He won the Pulitzer Prize in 1984 for that novel Ironweed, which later went on to be a film starring Jack Nicholson, Meryl Streep, and Tom Waits. It was a disaster, which is really not a surprise because the novel is quite grim. It is a wonderful book, but it is heavy. And they never made another movie out of any of his other books. I think it's a mistake on Hollywood's part because Legs would make exciting, compelling film. It is much better suited to the cinema than Ironweed. So that's it. Am I disappointed that it wasn't as good as Ironweed? No, of course not. It is still good. It just wasn't in that superlative category. And I will be reading more Kennedy in the future. Could I have been reading a better novel? Well, yes, I could have, but there's no need to be so relentless. And One more thing about these lists is they are not absolute. These lists are constantly being revised and challenged. Who's to say that one day, when they get round to removing all of the Henry James, who is the absolute worst writer in the English language, certain other books might make their way onto the list. Fucking Henry James. Main message part 2, for those of you who stuck around. Read what you want, but if you feel that you're in a rut and you need a little guidance, here's a list. I love it because this, for me, it feels like a treasure hunt. I go to the used bookstore and I am pulling books off the shelf when I bring 5 or 6 or 7 novels to the bookstore proprietor. He looks at them like, where the hell did those come from? Have a good attitude. If you read 20 books a year and you're saying, well, that is a 50-year prison sentence, think of it as 50 years of enjoying the most intellectually stimulating entertainment that the most talented minds have produced. That's why I'm making YouTube videos. I have read some unusual books and I want to share them with you. Please like and subscribe. If you want to see all of my videos, please go to Patreon and check out GrantLovesBooks. For the low price of $3 a month, you will have access to all of the videos and notes that I write, also the photos that I occasionally take. If you're interested in William Kennedy and you want to buy one of his books but you don't want to leave your home, I have provided a link to Amazon below. Any shopping you do, not only the book, but any shopping you do at all. Computers, sunglasses, makeup, curtain rods, windshield wiper blades. Anything you buy, I will get a little cut. Who would you rather give it to, Jeff Bezos or me? Thank you for watching. Have a great day and stay tuned.